It's been quite a busy week in terms of news in Formula 1, whether it be to do with renewed contracts, the clampdown on flexi wings and floors, Helmut Marko being given an official warning by the FIA for his comments on Sergio Perez, and of course there was the small matter of Red Bull's unbeaten start to the season unexpectedly coming to an end in Singapore. But there's actually another news story going around that has gone sort of below the radar, and I'm actually surprised isn't being spoken about as much as it should be. Now you're probably wondering what this news story is about. Well, it happens to be about a recently retired four-time world champion that goes by the name of Sebastian Vettel. You may have heard of him, and he has exclusively revealed that he cannot rule out a return to Formula 1 in the near future. Seb was speaking to Sky Sports F1's Martin Brundle during a sit-down at the Nürburgring, where Vettel was doing some demo laps in his championship-winning Red Bull F1 car from 2011, the RB7, and as you guessed it, it was running on sustainable fuels. And during this interview, Martin actually asked Seb straight up, would he actually consider coming back to Formula 1 in a full-time capacity? And his response was pretty interesting. This is what he had to say.
I can't say no, because you don't know. I think it's something that if you asked all of them, probably some of them would have said no, and some of them I don't know. But in the event, in the end, all of them came back. So I can't exclude it, but it probably will depend much on when, and obviously it's not endless, because at 36 it's not like, in 10 years time maybe I think about it. Then time has passed, but it will depend on the challenge, the situation, whatever. But it's not in my head right now.
So Seb's reply to that question was a pretty interesting one. He simply could not rule out the prospect of him returning to Formula 1 in the near future. But that actually in turn has raised an even more interesting question, and that's should he actually go ahead with a return to F1 when he so chooses? Is the buzz of driving Grand Prix cars simply too much for him to resist forever, despite the fact he has already achieved so much in his career and he's got absolutely nothing left to prove? I mean, when Seb announced his retirement midway through the 2022 season, he spoke of his desire to spend more time with his family and continue promoting sustainability within motorsport. And he has absolutely kept his word, because we know that he's been travelling around Europe with his family, and at the recent Goodwood Festival of Speed, when he drove his personally owned 1992 Williams FW14B and the McLaren MP4-8, he drove both of these cars on sustainable fuels. What I also thought was particularly interesting is that Seb actually admitted he is staying race fit, despite the fact he is doing no racing whatsoever this year. But he made it clear that he is doing this simply because he wants to, not because he expects to be called up to replace anyone in a Grand Prix. So all of this talk about Seb maybe making a return to Formula 1 is certainly not the first time that a driver who has been out of the sport, whether it be temporarily or permanently, is linked with a potential comeback. And this is something that surely Seb will take on board when he makes a decision as to whether he wants to return to racing full time, because as we have learned, comebacks to F1 don't always go to plan. Looking at these most recent examples of when a driver has come back to Formula 1 after a time away, they have had varying degrees of success, whereas Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso have absolutely proved that it is possible for a driver to have a period of time away from Formula 1 and come back with a certain degree of success. Michael Schumacher showed that it is not as easy as it looks on paper, as his 3-year comeback with Mercedes did not go as planned, as he failed to win a race and only had one podium finish. Raikkonen and Alonso's comebacks, on the other hand, were a success. Kimi managed to win another 3 Grand Prix with Lotus and Ferrari, and he also managed to finish in the top 3 of the Driver' Championship on 2 occasions. As for Alonso, he has had a handful of podium finishes with Alpine and Aston Martin, and is currently sitting 4th in the Drivers' Championship this season. There's actually a very clear reason as to why Raikkonen and Alonso's comebacks were a success and Schumacher's was not, and that's because Raikkonen and Alonso continued to race in other disciplines when they were out of Formula 1. Raikkonen did a 2-year stint in the World Rally Championship, whereas Alonso raced in a handful of other racing categories, such as the World Endurance Championship at Le Mans. He did the Dakar Rally, and he did even a couple of stints in IndyCar. Michael, on the other hand, during his 3 years out of the sport between 2007 and 2009, didn't race at all. He only did the odd test here and there for Ferrari. Right now, you'd have to say that Seb is going down a very similar path to Schumacher in terms of he's not racing in a series and only driving an F1 car for fun. But let's say that he actually goes ahead with this return. When would he decide to do this, and which team would he actually drive for? So I think we can absolutely start by ruling out 2024 for a comeback, given that there are only 3 seats available for next year and Seb is not in the running for any of them. So let's consider 2025 as the earliest season that Seb can make a return to Formula 1. And it makes a lot of sense, because it is expected that the driver market will be very open, given that there are a lot of drivers out of contract. And yeah, that does not necessarily mean that there are options available to him. Look at Mercedes, for example. They recently tied down Lewis Hamilton and George Russell until the end of 2025. So that pretty much rules out Seb from moving there. but there could be openings at some of the other teams. We know that Seb has unfinished business at Ferrari. Could he land a drive with them in 2025? We know that Carlos Sainz's contract runs out at the end of 2024. There's another seat possibly going at one of his other former teams, Aston Martin. Could he replace Lance Stroll alongside Fernando Alonso? Could he return to Red Bull, where he won all of his world championships, replacing Sergio Perez and teaming up with Max Verstappen? And let's not rule out a potential future move to Audi when they enter Formula 1 in 2026. That's when they take full control of Sauber, and we know that Audi has spoken openly about wanting a German driver as part of its driver lineup. We know that Mick Schumacher has been linked with the drive. Nico Hülkenberg recently expressed his interest in moving there in the future, and Seb will be a great fit because of his championship pedigree. The only problem with the Audi move is that it's still 3 years away, so Seb would have to do another 2 years on the sidelines without any form of racing. And as I mentioned earlier with the Michael Schumacher example, doing no racing for a period of time does carry its consequences. I think my overall verdict on this is, and it's probably going to be quite an unpopular one, is that actually I don't think that Seb should make a comeback to Formula 1 if he chose to. I think he's just so content with how his life is at the moment, spending time with his family, doing projects outside of racing that he's interested in, and then every now and again jumping into an F1 car when he can, such as at Goodwood and the Red Bull event at the Nordschleife recently. I think that is enough for him at the moment. Maybe that will change, we'll have to wait and see. The other problem that I have is obviously he's not racing or competing, which means he's not going to be as race sharp or as race ready as he should be. He's 36 years old. In 2026 he'll be 38 going on 39. So it's likely that these little details such as reflexes, reaction time won't be as sharp as they once were. And the last thing you want to see is a driver as good as he is. He's considered to be one of the best of his generation and of all time, not driving or performing at a level that we once saw him at. He's already had a career full of fulfillment and success, probably more than he ever imagined. 4 world championships, 53 Grand Prix victories, 57 pole positions and so on. He's already achieved so much in his career that it would be a shame to almost quaint that with a comeback that may not necessarily be as successful as we'd certainly hope and he'd certainly hope it would be. So I think that the Sebastian Vettel story should stay closed for now and not have another chapter. Well, there you have it. That's my thoughts and opinions of whether Sebastian Vettel should make a comeback to Formula 1. But now I want to hear what yours are. Should he make a return to F1 despite the fact that his legacy is absolutely intact both on and off the track? Or should he stay retired? Be sure to let me know in the comment section. And also don't forget to leave a like on the video and to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.